Now let us practice how this practice is about understanding the two natures of our mind. We are very thoroughly aware and comfortable with one nature of the mind, which is the flowing nature. This is the mind that grabs hold of all the information that comes from our sense doors and proliferates with the thinking that starts when information starts flowing through our sense doors. So from the time we are up in the morning until we go to sleep in the night, there is a bombardment of information, data that comes through our sense doors. Actually, it is data, right? Because it's not processed. Just raw data that comes from our sense doors. So we are bombarded with visual elements, colors and shapes. We are bombarded with various sound waves. We get quite a dose of fragrant notes, and then various tastes, not various actually, I think there are only 6 distinct tastes that our taste buds will recognize. And then various touch sensations on our skin. And lastly, thoughts that come randomly, as well as thoughts that get generated with these data points coming through the 5 sense doors, other than the mind. Mind is also a sense door. So when these data points come in, the Panchaskandha process converts the data into information and then gets us thinking. And the thinking then proliferates a thought process that then triggers words or actions or further thinking. And these thought processes are usually with desires, lobha, or with aversion, dvesha. And mostly these are at a minute level. So on a typical Tuesday, you wouldn't even know that your mind is full of desire or your mind is full of aversion, because these are at a very low or light levels. You become aware when they're at intense levels. Unless you are, of course, a meditator, and then you start getting aware that even when there is no data points coming in, there is an underlying sublime level of desire and aversion that is anyway present all the time. So this is because of our misunderstood notion about me, myself, I. This body is made of small particles, and these particles are so small, our naked eye cannot comprehend it. And these particles change at such speed, our brain cannot comprehend it. So the easiest example is a person who is watching a perahara or a procession. They see a person creating a ring of fire, and the ring of fire looks real because of the speed. And similarly, when we look at our body, the body looks real because our eye has a limited scope in seeing that this is actually a bunch of particles that are changing at a very rapid speed. So in this bunch of particles, there's nothing that you can point to and say, this is me, because it's too fast. Even if you point at some little particle, by the time you point and think about it or say it, it's changed many times over. So it's all in a flux, it's all changing, nothing is still. However, because of the limitations of our sense doors, it feels still, it feels solid, it feels non-changing. So this is why the Buddha said, The reality is anitya, impermanence, but you perceive it as nitya or permanent. Impermanence is perceived as permanent. Then anything that changes at that speed cannot give you happiness, because the happiness that we like to have comes from a place of permanency. Everything we desire, everything we have got, material or otherwise, we want them to stay the same way. And it is not possible, absolutely not possible. And then we feel sad. So, misunderstanding impermanence as permanence leads to misunderstanding the reality of dissatisfaction as a satisfaction. So this is the dukkha part, or the dissatisfaction that the Buddha said. The three characteristics of this world: impermanence, and this is dissatisfaction. And why is this arising? It's arising because of the misunderstanding of a being, me, myself, I. The body is made of particles. There is no particle you can point to. It's changing so fast. And the mind is made of energies, that the consciousness that arises and passes away so fast, even faster than the particles changing. So what we misunderstand as me is just a combination of these particles and consciousness, a flux. And again, due to the limitations of our senses, the limitations of the processing speed of our brain, we cannot see this, we cannot comprehend this. And we get a feeling that today here is me, this is the same me that was there yesterday and the day before, and even last month. It takes us years before we recognize that we are not the same. It takes insight meditation to recognize that you were never there in the first place. There's nothing that you can attribute to as me, because it's a flux. And that is the non-self, or the anatta. And here too the Buddha said, due to misunderstanding, you see it as atta, or there is a self. And that is why when we think of our childhood, we think of it as me. When we think of the future, somewhere in the future before we die, then also we think of it as me. So we project this misunderstood notion of me into the past and to the future. And we begin to live in time. So this misunderstood notion, you can live in a band of about 80 years. You spread it across 80 years, the past, the present, and the future. And due to this shape that we see as a solid shape, we have a physical manifestation of it also. So we live in the 3D world, and we live in time. Whereas the reality is there's nothing. There's just a momentary experience of some data that comes through the sense doors and a consciousness. And that's it. That's all that is there. So insight meditation is about understanding this. And all of this that I described is the first nature of the mind, the flowing mind. There's another nature of the mind, the second part, which is the knowing mind, the mind that knows. And what we are going to practice now is observing or being aware of that knowing mind. This knowing mind knows when it sees something. This knowing mind knows when it hears something. This knowing mind knows when it knows what it knows. And this is what the Buddha referred to when the Buddha said to, I forget his name, that Bahi, I think, if I'm not mistaken, what is seen is only what is seen. Dutu permanent. What is seen is only what is seen. And this is before it is processed through the Panchaskandha. What is seen is only what is seen. What is heard is only what is heard. So what is seen is your eye sees colors and shapes. That's it. It's the Panchaskandha through processing it that says, this is my son. This is my house. This is my car. This is my dog. Your eye has no idea about it. The eye is a sense door where data passes through. Your ear is a sense door where sound waves come in. Just a sound wave, like any other sound wave. And the Panchaskandha processes that sound wave and tells that this is my son speaking. And so on. So the Buddha recommended that the son, you see your son, you hear your son speaking, it's when you are with the flowing mind. And when you are with the knowing mind, you can see and you can hear. And this is what helps you to cultivate a universal love, a universal kindness. When you are in the flowing mind, what you have is a selfish love. Love only for those who you define as mine. When you're in the knowing mind, it's an abundant mind. There is abundance, abundance of love and kindness, compassion and forgiveness. That is where the peace lies. And happiness, a happiness that arises through peace. It is sustainable and it is worth the trouble and effort to cultivate. So let us now practice. We'll practice 5 minutes each. So when we sit and close our eyes comfortably, the eye sense door is closed. And right now, since we are not eating or drinking anything, we can assume the tongue sense door to be closed. And I'm assuming that you are in a neutral place like I, where there is no particular smell, pleasant or unpleasant. So we can assume that the nose sense door is also closed. And that leaves us with the ear, the body, and the mind. So let us first practice with the ear for 5 minutes. And this is what we need to do. Just know what that you are hearing without getting into what you are hearing, without processing. Just know that you can hear. And wherever your ear hears, just observe that you can hear, that the ear sense door is in touch with the sound wave. Just observe. Let us do this for 5 minutes. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Now, next, let us focus on the body. So, what you need to do is, there are two ways of doing this. One is you can do a body scan. You can start with your feet and work yourself up to the top of the head and just see whether there is any discomfort, or whether you feel a touch sensation or a little pressure and anything else. So you look at your feet with your mind's eye. And if your feet are bare and it is touching the floor, then you will be knowing of that touch. As you work yourself up, your knees may say something, either discomfort or stiffness. And at the lower body, you will feel the entire weight of the body into a seated position. Then if you are sitting with a straight back, you will notice if it is strained or if it is relaxed. Similarly, your hands and shoulders, is it tense? Is it relaxed? This is just the knower. Lastly, coming up, the neck, the head, sit relaxed. Any other sensations that you may feel. And that is one way, the body scan. The other way is to simply observe your breath. That's as a part of the body. A gentle rise and fall of the breath. And just be aware where your mind is going on the body. If something is itching, then the mind goes there, and you just know that there's an itching sensation. Something is, sometimes the leg falls asleep, and that can be not comfortable. It can be a bit stressful sometimes. And just be aware of those things that arise. And sometimes a fly may come and land on your nose, or worse, on your lips. And you can observe how that whole ew, yuck, all that feelings come. That is not something you want happening. You can raise your hand and chase the fly off. But the Buddha has advised monks, I don't know whether he has told this to laymen, he has advised monks that build tolerance in such instances. Build tolerance. Because that's a unique opportunity. One is to observe the aversion that comes in the mind, that arises, especially when a fly is landing on your face. Natural inclination is to chase it away. But if you use that opportunity as a fantastic opportunity for insight meditation, you can observe how all these feelings of yucky, icky feelings arise, how aversion arises, aversion to the fly. Why are you choosing to come now when I'm nicely doing some meditation? And the proliferation starts, and you might be thinking, you'll soon get thinking of other insect issues you have, or you'll be thinking of somebody who has let the window open when you always said don't keep that particular window open, something or the other. It could be a mosquito. It could be anything. So let us practice for 5 minutes. Just know the touch sensation on the body. Now, if you're sitting under a fan like what I am right now, feel the breeze on my head and on some parts of the body. I feel the chair in the posture I'm sitting. I feel the floor cold to the feet. You just observe. Let us start for 5 minutes. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Now let us focus on the third sense door, the mind. And what we are going to do is just be aware where the mind goes. You start with Anapanasati meditation. And then when the mind gets distracted, just know that it is now distracted. And then the mind will go somewhere else. Just know that now the mind is somewhere else. So what are these distractions? Usually when we are meditating, we remember what we need to do next and we start planning. Or we remember what happened yesterday and we start regretting some of those. Or just letting it replay just for the fun of it. Or based on what you can hear and what you can feel in the body, the mind goes there and starts thinking about it. So observing the mind is about knowing when all of these things are happening. The knowing mind. The mind going from these various sense door to sense door is the flowing mind. So the knowing mind, knowing when the mind is flowing. Let us try this and see. Let us try it for 5 minutes and see what it is like. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So let us now meditate a further 5 minutes and then we can stop. And this next 5 minutes now, you can do a combination. Start with Anapanasati and then be with that knowing mind. When you hear a sound, you know it's a sound. When you feel a touch sensation, you know it's a touch sensation. When there's some thinking that happens, you know that mind is now thinking. Be in that knowing place. We have all our life, we have been, the default is the flowing state. So we need to practice being in the knowing state. Because at some point we practice, we permanently shift into being in the knowing state, and that is that enlightened state. Right now we are fully in the flowing state, and that is why all the issues that we face, all those issues come when you're in the flowing state. When you're in the knowing state, it's peaceful. So let us practice this. This is something that needs to be practiced and cultivated. So let us start now for another 5 minutes. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, so I'll pause here for some questions.